Hello and welcome to Windows Business Weekly. My name is Russell Smith, and in today's episode I'm going to be talking about the Windows 10 May 2019 update, so stay tuned. Last week, Microsoft made the Windows 10 May 2019 update generally available for everybody on Windows Update. Now, you may remember that this feature update was originally due to be released in April, but because of the problems that Microsoft has had with the last couple of updates for Windows 10, they decided to let it bake a little bit longer in the slow and release preview rings for insiders, and they rolled it out internally at Microsoft to try and establish if there were any major issues before making it more widely available. Now, just because it's been released on Windows Update doesn't necessarily mean that it will be made available for your device. It depends, of course, on the software that you have installed, drivers, compatibility with your hardware. If it is cleared for your device, then it won't automatically install. You'll have to open Windows Update and manually click to download and install it at this stage. So there's no immediate panic to block it, but if you do want to defer the update, then have a look at last week's episode where I walked you through how to defer the update using Windows Update for Business. Of course, if you're using more traditional methods like System Center Configuration Management or Windows Server Update services, you can just hold off on approving this update for the moment. Now, I've had it installed for about a week. There are a few niggling little issues with it. Of course, it's a major update, that was bound to be the case. I haven't found any major problems. It's a relatively minor update. I don't recommend that you rush to install it. It is quite nice. Nothing that you really must have at this stage, but I want to talk you through some of the main features that you might find useful in the rest of this episode. So I'm going to switch over here to my virtual machine where I've got the update running. The first thing that you'll notice here is that the default desktop background has changed. In my opinion, it's much improved on what was previously available. So what's immediately noticeable? You can see here that the search box and Cortana have now been separated. So if I come down here, we have a slightly different search experience. Now you can see that top apps are now offered at the top, and if there were any documents on this device, you would see the most recent documents also listed there. And you can see it's quite a different design from what was previously available. If I type something in there, I don't know, like control panel, you can see that the window here has also been modified slightly. I can just expand this to get some more frequent tasks. And you can also see that recent actions in terms of switching features on and off there, because I've already done that on this VM, are also offered in the list there. I think it's a nice refinement. Search hasn't changed that much in this edition. We're going to get Microsoft Enterprise Search not until next year. What you can do now with Search is you can have Windows index your entire PC rather than just the common folders like documents and that kind of thing. So that might be something you want to do. Obviously, that's going to take up a little bit more processing time if you decide to index everything. But that has certainly changed as well. If you click on Cortana, of course, that now opens up in a separate, what can I say, floating window, if you like. And it's actually recording what I'm saying there, which is quite interesting. It's listening to everything that I'm saying. It doesn't understand anything that I'm saying, so anyway, that's maybe for the best. So now Cortana is separated, as you can see. It looks a bit odd, in my opinion, that it's kind of floating there. Not sure that I really like that from the aesthetics point of view. But interesting is that if you type something like remind me to do something in the search box, it still offers you to set a Cortana reminder. So although the GUI has been separated out, the functionality still remains for you to type and talk to Cortana, if you like, through that search box. And I'm glad that they've kept that feature in, because quite often I set reminders for myself that way. What else is visibly noticeable in the GUI? So if you have a look at the start menu, if you install Windows 10 from scratch with this update, you'll get a much cleaner start menu now with just 2 columns. And a lot of the kind of garish kind of Candy Crush stuff that you got in the previous feature updates has now been wiped away. Now, of course, you won't see this if you're upgrading. It's not going to suddenly refactor your start menu, but I think Microsoft have done the right thing here, cleaning all of this up, making it a much cleaner experience. So that's the start menu. You've got a couple of different icons here that have changed. Let's have a look on the power menu. I think they've changed those icons too. So all of that looks good to me. Again, nothing revolutionary, but it looks much tidier. Now, if you come over to the Action Center, I can't see it here on the VM, so I'll try and put a screenshot. Maybe I can't see it because it's a VM. But they've put a brightness slider now at the bottom. So rather than a button that kind of goes through different gradients of brightness, you can now use a slider to change the brightness of your display. But what's also really cool is that you can now configure, rather than modify, I suppose, configure the Action Center here without having to go into the Settings app. So you just right-click, select Edit, and it allows you to move these icons around, delete and add as you like. And I think that's a great addition to the Action Center. So I think from a visual point of view, at least everything that's obvious from booting into the OS, that's it. There is a light theme. Let's see if we can find it. I haven't actually used it. So let's see if I can find that. It should be on display. So let's have a look. Display, here we are. Don't see a theme there, so let me search for it. Themes and related settings. Okay, so you can see now that we have a Windows Light theme. If that's your thing, if that makes you happy, not really sure that it's for me. But it does, I have to say, maybe look a little bit better than the dark theme that Windows introduced a couple of versions back, which doesn't really fit nicely with some of the legacy UI elements. But you can see here I've opened File Explorer and it looks perfectly okay on top of the white theme. I haven't really done anything to it in the light theme, which was probably why it looks okay. But in the dark theme, it looks a bit of a mess, to be honest. But that's there if you'd like to have a look at that. So I'm going to close that down. Oh, actually, I should go back into settings. Probably one other thing. Some little bits and pieces of changing settings. Now they've brought across like Ethernet configuration across from the legacy control panel. But the major thing that's changed in settings is Windows Update. So you can see here now that the GUI has changed. You've got a lot of settings available that were previously buried under advanced options. So now you can pause updates at the click of a button. I think they've made this available for the Home SKU as well. And you've got various things there that are surfaced more readily. And in general, this is a big improvement. Microsoft have really improved Windows Update in this version because not only is Windows a little bit more intelligent in terms of when it applies updates, because it's quite common that you can be in the middle of doing something, then it will decide to update. Microsoft say at least that they have improved Windows Update with machine learning and artificial intelligence to understand when the device is being used and to only apply updates at an appropriate moment. Of course, we see how that actually works out in practice. Additionally, Microsoft Store updates will only happen when you're not using your device. Again, this is just to help keep your machine working well, so that it's not updating things in the background when you're actually using it. So really a big improvement here for Windows Update. So what other big features have we got? Windows Sandbox. Now I can't show you on this VM unfortunately because it doesn't support nested virtualization, which is required for this feature. But Windows Sandbox is basically a lightweight utility VM, if you like, that is kind of disposable, that you can fire up without any image. You don't need to download an image. It uses Windows files that already exist on your PC. You can fire it up and you can maybe browse to websites that you're not sure whether they're safe or not. You can install software that you're not sure whether it's safe or not, and that version of Windows is isolated from the main OS. So it's like a temporary experimental environment, and it doesn't have the same overhead as a fully fledged virtual machine. So it's kind of a combination of container and VM technology, and of course not every user has the technical know-how to manage a VM and to install Windows in the VM. And this really quickly allows you to fire up a virtual machine without any of the work you would need to do that under usual circumstances. Now, there are a couple of disadvantages here. The first is that, of course, it requires your hardware to be Hyper-V compatible because it uses the Hyper-V as the hypervisor technology which it runs on. So you'll need a device that is able to do that, because that is most modern devices, so hopefully it won't be a problem. The other thing is that nothing can survive a reboot. So if you've got a piece of software that you want to try out and it requires you to reboot Windows in order to install it, that's not going to work in the sandbox. Everything is basically wiped and you start from clean after a reboot. So that's a bit of a disadvantage. I hope that they will find some way to allow Windows to be persistent through a reboot in a later feature update. I think that would make the Windows Sandbox much more useful and much more viable alternative to giving users a virtual machine. What else is new? Windows Defender now has tamper protection. So let's see, I don't know if we can see it. We just open the Windows Security Center here. Can't remember where the setting is, to be honest. I think it's here. Yep, tamper protection. So basically this is supposed to stop malicious processes disabling Windows Defender. Now in the 2 or 3 devices where I've installed the May 2019 update, both fresh installs, they were not upgrades. For whatever reason it seems to be off by default. Not quite sure why that is. I'll see if I can enable it. There we go, it's enabled. So I don't know why that's off by default, but it's definitely something that's probably worth enabling, and you should check on any devices that you decide to upgrade. Okay, what else? Reserved storage. Now again, I can't show you on this device because reserved storage is only enabled on new devices that ship with the May 2019 update. And what reserved storage does is it blocks off, I'm not sure exactly how many gigabytes, I think it's variable depending on the size of your hard disk and various other factors, some space on the disk in order to make sure there is always free space so that Windows Update can download and install updates. Now you'll know that this can be a big problem with especially notebooks that have small SSDs, that basically the user fills it up and then you get to the stage where Windows Update just can't do what it needs to do because there isn't enough free disk space. And this feature is long overdue in my opinion, and I think this is really going to help make sure that Windows stays up to date. Now, if your devices didn't come shipped with the May 2019 update, which of course is likely to be the case at this stage, you can enable this feature through the registry if you want. Okay, what else? More of the built-in apps can be uninstalled. So that may be good news for enterprises that don't want things like the mail and calendar apps can now be uninstalled, movies and TV, 3D Paint, 3D Viewer can be uninstalled, Groove can be uninstalled, and that's all new in this feature update. Now you can actually sign in to Windows with a passwordless Microsoft account. And Microsoft has added, I'll just show you in the settings app here quickly. If I go back and click accounts, they've added to sign in options, security key. So if you've got a Microsoft account and you've set it up for passwordless sign in and you've got a compatible security key, you can now log into Windows using that key. As far as I know at the moment, it's only supported for Microsoft accounts. So if you're logging in with an Azure Active Directory account, I don't think it's supported at the moment, but don't quote me on that. But of course, I'm guessing that is coming sooner rather than later if it's not already there right now. You can't set up a passwordless account via this system. You still have to do that online or through a mobile app on your phone, for instance. But anyway, we're gradually moving towards a passwordless world, and Microsoft is really doing a lot to make that happen. Okay, what other things have we got in this update? A couple of things that I can mention. We have got what? Fixing the display for scaling apps. So if you're switching displays and you're switching resolutions and scaling, you'll notice that sometimes apps are fuzzy when you change displays. In previous versions of Windows, Microsoft would offer you a button sometimes, if you were lucky. Do you want to fix this app and fix it to make sure that everything looks crisp and sharp on the display? Microsoft is now automatically going to do that for you so that you don't have to manually do that. So I think that's great as well. There are some automated troubleshooters now in the background. So when you have a really serious problem, Microsoft is going to automatically fix them for you. I don't know, that might be a bit scary because sometimes the fixes break things, but you can turn that off if you want. What else is new here? Sticky notes have been improved. So I'm not exactly sure what exactly in sticky notes is new to this update, but basically, as I read, never used it myself, that they now synchronize with the cloud. There's also artificial intelligence in there. So if you type in something like, remind me to do this, it will flag up a reminder on all this kind of thing. As I say, I've never used it. I have a feeling that artificial intelligence was there. I remember seeing it in one of the Windows Inking demonstrations several years ago. But anyway, there's new stuff with sticky notes. If you want to have a look at that, probably that's not going to be a big thing. So I think that is everything on my list, and it's a lot of minor improvements there. One other thing I can say, again, you won't be able to see it here. I didn't want to bring up the feedback hub. What did I want to do? I wanted to bring up File Explorer. And again, you won't be able to see it, but now they're sorting the downloads by dates. Can't see that here because there are no downloads, but again, that's pretty good. You've got them automatically categorized by date, just so you can find them more easily. So that's one other thing that I noticed, by the way. But I think that's pretty much it. I don't think there's anything major that I've missed out. I'd recommend that you have a look at downloading this. You can get the evaluation ISO from Microsoft's website, load it up into a VM and see what you think, test it, of course, and then maybe at some point in the future you can think about rolling it out to a set of test users. There are already a couple of cumulative quality updates available for it, and as I'm recording this, there's another one sitting in the slow ring, I think, so probably we'll see that made available on Windows Update within the next week or so. There is an issue when you're scaling your display with some applications not quite adjusting their display correctly, and I think that update is coming in the next quality update. So definitely this thing is not quite ready to roll out to your users yet. I would give it another few months, but it's pretty good. And that's it for this week. Now there's going to be no Windows Business Weekly next week because I'm going to be on holiday. So I'll see you in 2 weeks, and that's it for now.